Beautiful. We're still here. You ready? So, camera rolling, sound rolling. Hello and welcome. My name is Luke Martin, and I shall be your guide tonight, or whenever you are watching this, in this deep dive into the wonderful world of the Slatterverse. But first, I hear you exclaim in uproar. Pray, good Signor Luke, what be the Slatterverse you speak of? Well, I say to the uninitiated, let me tell you. The Slatterverse is the interconnected universe in which the short films written and directed by Ollie Slatter take place in. Ollie Slatter? Slatterverse? You keeping up? In this video, I aim to unfold to you all the connections between the films, as well as attempt to answer the question, what is the Slatterverse about? What is the bigger picture? What is it trying to say? So, shall we begin? The Dugout. Though the framing device of the film takes place in 1974, the bulk of the film takes place in 1917, in the midst of World War I. We follow Private David, that's last name David, not first name David, who, after lying about his age to join the army, bonds with another young soldier, Private Bailey. Look at that guy. Look at that smolder.
He has no idea what's coming for him.
Also, remember this guy's face. Just for later, remember it. War is war, and war is terrible. And in the conflict, Private Bailey is fatefully wounded, and David is forced to abandon him to survive. And survive he does, but the memory of Bailey lives on in his mind and heart. This memory of Bailey also hangs heavy on him in 1974 for another reason that we'll come back to later. For now though, let's jump into our next film, The Least. We jump forward 22 years now to 1939 and welcome to the floor, James Bailey. Same name, same face. Here we have our first connection. The Private Bailey of the Dugout is the uncle of James Bailey. Tragically, James never got to meet his father's brother. James, though, is doing rather well for himself. He's got a nice little house in the countryside and he's married to a lovely woman named Nancy. All is fine and dandy, they bake, they dance, they play Monopoly. James crushes at Monopoly. But a spanner is thrown into the works when England goes to war with Germany. Welcome to World War II. Buckle your seatbelts. So James Bailey is a soldier now, a corporal. And who's that sat drinking hot cocoa with him? We recognise that face, don't we? This is Cameron David. David Cameron. And we come to our next connection. David Cameron David is the son of Private David. Perhaps the bond created between his father and James's uncle is what drew these two soldiers together so quickly. Things go south on James's mission and he is left in enemy territory alone, with only one goal: get back to Nancy. And to David Cameron David to get back his wedding ring for Nancy. Here's another face you should just bank for the future. And speaking of faces, remember this one? Yeah, last time we saw this family, they were fighting on the other side of the war. How did this son end up fighting for the wrong side? Don't ask me. I can't explain everything. I'm not Hank Green. Here's another very special face for your face bank. Just check it in. Look at that guy. Wow. After trials and tribulations and finding a new squad to team up with, James gets back to David Cameron David and back to Cameron. Nope, to Nancy. James Bailey gets back to David Cameron David and gets back to Nancy. But he is not the same man he was before. War has broken him. Maybe forever. But one thing's for sure. Nancy will never leave his side. The two stay married and have a son named Gabriel. He'll become important again in just a moment. James Bailey does meet his friend's father, Private David. They share tea together. They become friends. This isn't in the films, this is just headcanon. But you're not here for headcanon, you're here for the hard, raw facts. So let's get into Liability. Welcome to 1974. And who's this? This is Jake Kennedy. David Cameron David had a daughter and she married into the Kennedy family. And here we are, Jake Kennedy. And who's Jake Kennedy? Well, he's a nice kid. Helps out his neighbours, likes riding his bike, wants to be a motocross rider. What's a motocross rider? Hey Google, what's a motocross rider?
According to Risk Racing, motocross is a racing sport where participants ride motorcycles over rough terrain. The courses have to be 1 to 3 miles long, and they need to have different obstacles for the riders. No two courses are alike, and that can make motocross more demanding than other racing sports.
Okay, all's well in Jake's life, but elsewhere in 1974, a bank is being robbed by two finely dressed gentlemen. But before we discuss them, may I just point out, the nameless family lives on. Security guard number 1. You're on the good guy's side this time, I salute you. Also, bank this face. Back to Jake, he's riding along, not a care in the world, when he's almost run over by the two finely dressed gentlemen. And finally, who are these two finely dressed gentlemen? Dean Ryder and Gabe Wilson. I'll get to Gabe in a sec, but first, Dean. Recognize that face? Yeah, he doesn't talk to his father. Now Gabe Wilson, not Bailey. And why is this? Gabriel was always a rebel, revolting against his father and mother, James and Nancy. James's emotional distance didn't help this either. And one day, Gabe found himself turning his back on his family and their name, and choosing a new moniker for himself, Wilson, as he entered the life of crime. Also, Memulus is a policeman in the Slatterverse. Yeah.
Suspects are seen leaving the CMD Selhurst Bank in Orangeford, Granada. No confirmed location, over.
Jake gets wrapped up in Dean and Gabe's scheme, and yet again the David Kennedys are face to face with the Bailey Wilsons. And this time it's a more antagonistic affair as Jake breaks free and takes out Gabe Wilson with his trusty slingshot, leading to Gabe's eventual arrest. If we circle all the way back to the Dugout, Private David has just seen that the son of his good friend James, who passed away a couple years ago, has just been arrested, and he doesn't even bear his family name anymore. The Bailey name now only exists in his heart. As for Dean, he meets Tommy Willows. Yeah, he also doesn't talk about his father. And Jake gets £200 to start chasing his motocross riding dreams. And now we come hurtling to the modern day era of the Slatterverse. So where do we start? Skip a beat? 3 days? Money that bleeds? Money that bleeds. Okay. Money that bleeds. What would you do for cash? What would you do for cash? What would you do for cash? 2016. This film centers around this guy. This guy doesn't have a name, so I'm just going to call him Guy. And do we know who this is? He's the grandson of Tommy Willows. Wait, is this... That's real robbery for... That's... Okay. Well, Guy Willows has clearly taken a page out of his grandfather's book and is a criminal himself. But he's not a coward like his grandfather. He gets his own hands dirty. It's like a video game. So Guy gets his money. He buys a big house, a nice car, but his life... it's empty.
But my life felt empty, like I was missing something. I told myself I was done, but I wasn't.
He told himself he was done, but he wasn't. And he robs the same bank that Dean Reeder and Gabe Wilson robbed for his grandfather 42 years ago. And it actually has some of the coolest action and gunplay that the Slatterverse has to offer. Fair play, 2016 Ollie. Fair play. But it's not a clean getaway for Guy, and he's chased down by none other than Dean Reeder's son. Since Dean got out of the criminal life, he changed his last name to Collins and made sure to raise his sons on the straight and narrow. So much so that one of them became a cop, and a cop that goes above and beyond. But alas, my little Collins cop, you flew too close to the sun, and your speech was forever stopped by Guy Willows. Guy dies in a night shootout with the cops shortly later, and goes to meet his grandfather, either above or below. Next up, we're in 2017 with the confusingly titled 5872. And I can't really explain this one. There's child soldiers, a helicopter chase that turns into a car chase, but I think there's only one important thing that we need to take away from this film. This guy's the Prime Minister. So depending on how far into his tenure he is, and whether he's elected for a second term, this is the guy in charge for the rest of what happens. I'd vote for him. Where to next? Felicity. Still in 2017, we follow the son of Jake Kennedy. The film doesn't give us a name for our protagonist, so I shall dub him whatever the first male character name that comes up is when you Google the 1998 hit show Felicity. And that name is... Ben. Ben Kennedy reflects on his own existence. His father, now retired from his motocross riding days, faced deadly thieves and lived. His grandfather fought in World War II, and his great-grandfather fought in World War I. How can he ever live up to their deeds and exploits? Does he need to? Who knows? He also walks into the sea with his shoes on, which is awful. Bad. This one's just an advert. I can't explain this one. It's pretty cool though. In the year 2018, we got the likes of Mission Impossible, Fallout, Infinity War, and Aquaman, but there was only one film that you needed to see. Skip a beat. We follow Mia, who isn't related to any of the families we've been following so far, and we know this because... she's ginger. Though you might recognise me as work colleague. And I know, you're going. Luke, didn't Guy Willows die in 2016 in a night shootout with the cops after killing Dean Reeder's now Dean Collins' son, Cop Collins? And you would be right. This is Guy's twin brother, Fry Willows. And he's lived a much more ordinary and mundane life. And unlike his brother, he's still kicking. And he didn't attend his brother's funeral. It was a big family drama, just a mess, real Succession kind of stuff. But I digress. Digress right into another connection. Because who is that? It's the Nameless family. They're back. They never left. They're always here. Long live the Nameless. They were here before we came. They'll be here long after we're gone. The Nameless live on. Long live the Nameless. I don't know what happened there. Anyways, knock at the door. Who's there? It's Cop Collins. No, it isn't. It's his twin brother, Joseph Collins. Remember that name, because he'll be back soon. He's everywhere. The nameless shall prevail. And look who it is. It's nice to know that each descendant of both families makes sure to get similar jobs in the same building every time. But back to Mia, unhappy with her fast-paced life in the city, which has practically cut her off from her family. No, not again, not the nameless again, no, please. Practically cut off from her family, Mia decides to travel back to the countryside to see them by any means necessary, which I guess means tearing up her work, running through the woods, and stealing a car from a guy named Keith. Sorry, Keith, but when she gets to her family home, she's too late. They're gone. Or dead, I'm not sure. On that downbeat note, we enter 2020, and something happens this year. Something that changes the world, changes how we live, shows us that the only way we're going to survive on this spinning rock hurtling through space is together. This thing has no relation to anything of import that happened in 2020 of our world. It's something different. Anyways, 3 days, and here we are, 2021, the final film chronologically in the Slatterverse for now. We follow Holly Collins, yep, as in Cop Collins, as in his twin brother who is still alive, Joseph Collins. And Joseph isn't doing too hot. After the undisclosed event of 2020, he lost his job and has become a couch potato. And who's that on the TV? Why, it's Fry Willows, of course. He too was affected by the undisclosed events of 2020 and decided to go into his passion. News presenting. Though you wouldn't know it from how he looks, he is having the time of his life. And who's that dashing young man there with the black eye and the bloody nose? I'll never tell. Now, Holly has just received a call from her grandmother, the wife of Dean Reeder's now Dean Collins. And it's not good news. And now Holly must make the trek across the country to see her grandmother, perhaps for the final time. Her father's no help, of course, but along the way, who does she run into in an empty car park at night? It's Lewis Wilson, grandson of Gabe Wilson and great-grandson of James Bailey. What? Let me explain. Before getting thrown into the slammer, Gabe Wilson had an on-again, off-again relationship with a lady who was actually related to the Nameless family. Because they take over everything. Now, Gabe's son, Jacob Wilson, was conceived before Gabe was thrown away, but was born when Gabe was already in the slammer. Gabe watches his son grow up from behind bars, and it changes him. When he gets out, he marries Jacob's mother, and they have a happy family together. That is until one of Gabe's heists go wrong, and he disappears for good. What happened to Jacob? We'll find out as we continue. But for now, just know, Gabe's son is Jacob, Jacob's son is Lewis. So now the Bailey Wilsons are yet again dealing with the Reeder Collinses. Holly agrees to Lewis's proposition to make this a road movie, and off they go. And I know what you're asking. I know. A night has passed. They must have dreamt. What were their dreams, Luke? What were their dreams? Well, I'll tell you. If you just let me tell you what their dreams were. That question you definitely were asking. Holly's dream is explored and framed in the film Bonnie and Bonnie. Holly sees herself as the titular Bonnie, dealing with the moral dilemma of this new friendship she has formed with who she is fairly certain is a criminal, as well as the looming feeling of loss as she fights against the only thing that nobody can defeat. Time. Why is Lewis represented by another girl named Bonnie? I don't know. This is Holly's head, not mine. Ask her. And as for Lewis's dreams, his dreams are shown in the little things, because he likes to think he's philosophical, more open-minded than his stuck-up father Jacob. And whilst we're here, above the city, this is what Fry Willows is dreaming now. He's living his dreams as a news presenter. He is above the city and on top of the world. But back to the waking world. The duo have been on the road for hours and they're getting a bit of the munchies. So what do? Rob a bakery, of course. Which bakery, you ask? Well, of course, it's a bakery that was once a bank that both their grandfathers stole from. After being successfully robbed multiple times, the bank had to close its doors. But there's always a silver lining, as it was bought and done up by a small local family bakery business. Now that the bakery has also been stolen from, the locals say that the very bricks and foundations are cursed by the Nameless. Anyways, Holly and Lewis make a clean getaway, but they're being followed by someone. Who is it? I'll never tell. They break into just a house to sleep in for the night. It's very clear Lewis has inherited his grandfather's intelligence. And it's here that we get a direct reference to Gabe Wilson.
Well, my granddad was a crook. So, of course, my dad became a cop. And so, naturally, I became...
And before he can explain who he is, the place he has found in the world, the cops interrupt. This time, it's Collins getting chased by the cops, not a cop Collins chasing the culprit. One awesome window smash stunt later, and Lewis has let himself be captured so that Holly can escape, get to her grandmother's, and save the bears. The bears are, yeah, just watch the film if you want to know. We also get a glimpse at Jacob Wilson, and he doesn't look like literally every other person on the male side of his family tree. The mother's genes were strong with this one. This could perhaps be because Jacob Wilson is portrayed by the real-life father of the actor who portrays Gabe, Lewis, and James. But who would know that? Holly makes it to her grandmother's as the sun comes up, and we cut to black. Letting our imaginations finish the story. And then we have it. Oh, I need some water. And there we have it, the Slatterverse, 1917 to 2021, 104 years. Following the Baileys, now the Wilsons, the Reeders, now the Collinses, and the Willows. And of course,
The Nameless.
but what has this all been for? Every main narrative film in the Slatterverse deals with loss, and especially the loss of family, be that chosen, found, or blood. Each film explores in its own way the different things that family means. Whether that's the pressure to live up to those who have come before, making up for lost time, fighting to see them again, or how the friends we meet along the way sometimes become our true family. I think the main message, and my main takeaway from the Slatterverse is this. Cherish every moment you have with your family, blood or otherwise. None of us have control over how much time we have on this earth. The only thing we have control over is what we do with it. So spend a little time today telling your family how much you appreciate them. The memories I have making these films are treasures, and I am so grateful. Now let's look to the future. Elysian Fields. What's that? The main character looks exactly like Holly Collins, but isn't Holly Collins? Ben Kennedy is in it, right? Right? Yeah, but his name isn't Ben or Kennedy at all, is it? And when's it happening? Like maybe it could be the future, or is it a period piece like the 60s? We could make that just modern day. So around 3 days kind of time. Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't seen Ollie's films, or if you just want to rewatch them with your newfound knowledge, I have a playlist linked below with all of the Slatterverse films in chronological order. I've also linked Ollie's channel if you prefer to watch them in release order. Who am I to tell you what order to watch the Star Wars films or read the Narnia books? So, same with the Slatterverse. I hope you've enjoyed this trip through the Slatterverse with me, and remember, love and cherish your family, whoever they may be. But more importantly, can you like, comment, and subscribe? Because the algorithm loves that.